Hi, and thanks for joining me today. My name is Heidi Harris, and I'm the Global Product Marketing Director for our Applications and Viz portfolio with GE Healthcare. And I'm joined by Dr. Stenowin, who is the CEO and radiologist for Houston Medical Imaging in Houston, Texas. And today he's joining me to talk about his firsthand experience with Air Recon DL and the Air family of products. Thanks so much for joining me today.
No, it's my pleasure. Good
Awesome.
afternoon.
Thanks. So you're based in Houston, you're deep in the heart of Texas, and within about a 5-mile radius of some of your imaging centers, you have Texas medical centers that are largely academic, which obviously has some of the top hospitals in the U.S. It makes it a very competitive market. So in terms of referring physicians, they have much higher expectations. So how do you envision a partnership with GE to, at the forefront of technology to help you be successful?
It's a really good question because there's a couple of levels of competition. And first of all, if you're a community imaging center, the bar is not that high. You're going to do mainly bread and butter MRs, brains and spines and knees and shoulders and maybe a few body images. And the expectations aren't that high. And so most of these centers are going to end up with, dated 1.5 Tesla MRs. But nonetheless, we have to establish what is the bar that we need to attain. In the medical center, that bar is quite high. And if we're going to be successful, we can certainly compete with the medical center on prices. Outpatient prices are much lower than prices in the medical center, but they're going to want the same level of sophistication. And frankly, as I'm investing more and more money into the high technology, it's more expensive, and so I have to be able to perform complex procedures with or without contrast, whether they're body, whether they're neuro, things that are going to reimburse better, because if you invest $1.6 million in a 3T MRI, you can't just do bread and butter lumbar spines and knees and expect to pay for it. So my doctors demand it, and as a business owner, as the CEO of Houston Medical Imaging, I'm encouraged to invest in really good technology because we're going to be able to answer those clinical questions that otherwise would go to a Methodist or a Herman or an MD Anderson. And we see patients from all of those institutions on a daily basis.
So let's talk a little bit about the economics of having an independent imaging center and making the decision to move to 3T, which you did a few years back. Talk to me a little bit about the business model with declining reimbursements for imaging centers like yours.
It's funny because really I'm just a doctor. I'm not a business guy. I'm a doctor, and that's how I started. And when I set up my goals were basically I want to have fun. I want to read great images, and I want to be able to stay in business, pay myself, and pay my employees and my partners. So when we first started, 2008, we looked at a 3T from your competitors, and I signed the contract, and then came along DRGs and. Reimbursement was slashed, and I felt like I really couldn't afford it. And so we went ahead and backed off from the 3T, went to a 1.5 platform, and we were able to improve quality but not really get it far enough. As things evened out and our volumes kind of equalized, I was able to kind of establish an economic safety equilibrium, so to speak. And so at that point I said, maybe it's time now to take some risk and to invest some money. So in 2009, when the economy really tanked, that's when I purchased my first MRI, 3T, to kind of elevate the process. And it was really pretty magical because when everyone else was struggling and worried about their business, I found that all of a sudden I was getting new referrals from the Methodist docs and from the Herman docs who wanted MR enterography. They wanted high-end neural stuff. We weren't doing a lot of prostate at the time, but we were starting to do prostate. And so having the 3T enabled me to grow my business during really difficult economic times. And I learned a good lesson. So ever since then, we continue to really take a little bit of financial risk to push the envelope because at the end of the day, we get new referrals, we get new patients. Not only is it economically a good decision for me, but it makes me as a radiologist and a physician really happy to know that I'm doing the best job. And my partners as well are just really enamored with working in this dynamic, interesting clinical setting.
So do you foresee or have you already experienced how Air Recon DL can really help you meet those financial goals that you have?
So we've been on platform less than a month. And the launch went really smoothly. I think you guys were a little concerned when you came the first day, and I had 14 patients on the schedule, but we were able to get through very efficiently, change the protocols, and get really nice images from day one.
Yeah.
The real big advantage I get with Air Recon DL is the fact that we're getting the same quality of imaging, indeed better quality imaging if we're talking about our prostates or our high-end neuro or a pituitary study that we went over today. So we're getting great images in about half the time. And so immediately you can begin to change your image slots. Instead of a 45-minute slot for a prostate, we go down to a 30-minute slot. If I can do an MRI of the knee in 9 minutes, instead of a 30-minute slot for an MRI of the knee, I can put in, say, 3 15-minute slots an hour. So within several days of becoming comfortable that we had the right protocols in place, we changed our schedule. We changed the slot limits. We increased the number of patients we're doing per day. So pretty immediately we've seen an impact on our volume.
Right.
And we know that if we're really clever, we can probably do 25, 30 patients a day, recognizing that a lot of them are complex and, they're not simple knees and elbows. A lot of these are going to be body imaging, which takes a little bit more time.
Yeah. So that obviously helps your bottom line and helps you with your return on investment. Did you ever find that there is a breaking point, a break-even point when it comes to the amount of cases that you do per day?
It depends on your mix of cases. If you do Medicare patients and their double studies and their spines or, a brain and an MRA, you're getting 50% reimbursement on the second one. The reimbursement can be pretty low. And so even if you're doing 20 patients a day, if they're Medicaid, Medicare, you may not be able to pay the bills.
Right.
And so what I want to do is I want to make sure that I've got a good mix of patients, that we're doing complex studies. And I know that if I'm doing 14, 15 patients a day and half of them are complex body exams or neuro exams, the bottom line is taken care of. There's a second benefit, and that is we've got a new center in Pearland. And we opened up last October. We were just beginning to build the business, and then COVID came. So we actually shut down completely that facility for 6 weeks.
Wow.
Well, now that we have this MRI, which is generating a lot of excitement amongst the local docs down there, other docs who've seen the images are happy to send their patients from Memorial or Southwest Houston over there. This is acting as a magnet for traffic to that center. So we're beginning to see now not only improvement in the MR volume side, but we're seeing more CT patients, more ultrasound patients, more X-ray patients, because there's just a kind of a level of excitement.
Right.
Little Pearland, Texas, which is a big little town, really has the state-of-the-art technology that can't be matched anywhere in the state.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. You are like one of the first globally.
I am one of a kind.
Yeah,
one of a kind.
I know.
Yeah.
It's really exciting.
A legend in my own mind.
That's a legend in Texas for us. Let's talk a little bit about your Cigna Pioneer. And you've taken advantage of the full suite of Air products that we offer. So from Air Coils to Air Touch, and now adding Air Recon DL in there for your everyday workflow. How has it impacted your patient experience? Have they commented about some of those things, or?
As when I first looked at the Pioneer, and this was before the air coil technology had been released, we bought our coils, we made our decision when we decided on a plan. At some point prior to installation, the air coils came out, and I immediately called my representative, Nicole, and me, and I said, hey, guys, I really need to have this. And, of course, they accommodated me, and we put that in. I think from the patient perspective, having the air coil was... Patients kind of notice it, but I have to say patients really don't know what to expect. And even though they get a really good experience, they don't really comment upon it. We are seeing now with the Air Recon DL where a patient has had, for example, a prostate previously. Maybe they've had it elsewhere. Maybe they've had it on one of my other scanners. And the last time it was a 45-minute procedure. They had to pull on this heavy coil. It was a little uncomfortable. And now they're coming in. We put the air coil. We tuck it in. And 20 minutes later, they're done. I mean, they go, that wasn't too bad.
Right.
And since most of these prostate patients are grumpy old men, I mean, they're like, hey, this is pretty good. Maybe they'll tell their friends.
Exactly. They're like, over drinks or whatever. They'll, hey, you should go.
The word does get around.
That does. It does. What about for some of your technologists? We met Renew yesterday, and he seemed super excited about it.
The funny thing about technologists is technologists do not like change.
Yeah.
They get comfortable. They get set in their ways. They push a button. They take good care of their patients and they engage, but they want to be chill. And so when I told them we were getting this new technology, they were like, great.
Right.
Super happy. they're fighting to work at Pearland.
Yeah.
They love it. It's so fun. It's so fast. And
Yeah.
then they're able to create these beautiful images, and they're very enthusiastic,
Yeah.
very supportive.
That's how I feel about it, right? As I'm also a technologist by trade, and when I start to see the images come off of there, I'm like, wait a second.
I mean, you should have seen, I think Russell was there the day we did the pituitary. You should have seen his eyes. He was just like,
Right?
that's
Wow.
amazing.
Yeah.
Because he looks at these images every day. And
Yeah.
that was our third patient.
Wow.
Yeah, fun.
So out of the box experience, didn't take much time to, adjust to the protocols to what you needed?
The first day we went live, we were supposed to block the schedule and have no patients. Someone forgot to tell someone else. It might
Right.
have been me. So we had 14 patients on the schedule. I don't think we missed a beat. I mean,
Wow.
they were changing protocols on the fly. The protocols that we selected on the fly are the protocols we're still using today.
Yep.
The image quality was enhanced. The scan times were reduced. And it went really smoothly. I think everyone was a little nervous except me.
Yeah.
Because I figured it was going to be pretty seamless.
Yep.
And I'm the boss, so I can take the heat if it goes wrong.
Right.
But no, it was seamless, it was efficient, and very effective.
Yeah. That's awesome. How about some of the other radiologists that work in your clinics, and they read, a variety of different cases? How's some of their reactions or impressions have been for that?
I've spoken to 3 of the subspecialists about the procedures. I've had them review the studies, MSK Neuro in particular, and they're very happy. I mean, again, they're used to good images because we've been scanning at 3T.
Right.
They don't know how quick the scan is.
Sure.
They just see that, the images are nice and I can read it and I'm happy. And I haven't had a single complaint. And what I usually gauge is not the enthusiasm, but it's if they complain.
Right.
If
Right.
they just don't complain, then they're really happy.
Yeah. Then that's good.
Yeah.
No news is good news, right? And have you personally, or have they personally felt any sort of? I mean, obviously it's easier to read, right? But I mean, what does that do to your productivity as a radiologist? You want to get through your workload of, reading cases. Has that improved? Do you feel like over time it'll be much easier?
We haven't really studied or looked at that aspect of it. I do know that when I personally read a study, if it's a nice study, if it's a pretty study, if there's not a bunch of artifact, I don't have to go back and think or look at it 2 or 3 times. We do get through them more quickly. I have not tried to quantify that. I'm certain that it's a little bit faster because the images are so pretty. But maybe that would be a fun kind of side-by-side comparison we could do, is actually how long does it take to read a brain in orbit versus on the
Done.
AirTouch DL. You never know.
Right. Let's do that study. Let's do it. Because I do think it's a hard thing to quantify, right? Is it, eye strain or, just the time that it takes. And, we're trying to think of different ways to be able to quantify that. But sometimes it is just personal.
You could just start a clock and actually do a study.
True.
But honestly, when we read a really nice study, the dopamine receptors are popping off. I mean, it's pleasant, it's
Right.
fun. And when we read a crummy study, it's unpleasant, it's frustrating, and it's, you don't feel as good. And so when you're reading the best quality images, maybe you're a little faster, maybe you're not. But if you just have a nice, positive, sense of having done a great job, it makes the day more interesting, more fun. And that's what it's all about, because
Right.
at the end of the day, we have to get all the way back to being a doctor, taking care of our patients, and helping our clinicians.
Right.
And so having these great images, it makes it easier.
Sure.
Absolutely.
For sure. So as we mentioned earlier, you are one of the first sites in the world that commercially has this installed, the Air Recon DL that's installed. So tell me a little bit more about what that experience has been like for you.
So I'm really fortunate that as a CEO of Houston Medical Imaging and as a practicing radiologist, I get to kind of, weigh the needs of both and make decisions that I think are going to be helpful and strategic for both. Being able to do projects like this, being able to integrate a new product into my practice like Air Recon DL, I mean, it's pretty exciting. I mean, number one, I know that it's going to differentiate my business. I know that the word will get out on the street and people
Right.
will talk about it. And it will kind of give me a little bit of a lift in terms of continuing to be respected as someone who's out there making investments, taking a little bit of risk. As a radiologist, it's kind of fun. I mean, sometimes we're like children in our toys, and we get to play with our toys. And for me, this is kind of like I'm out in the sandbox building castles because it's fun and it makes me feel good and it's exciting. So it's been a great opportunity, and I look forward to getting additional chances as we continue, as you continue to roll out enhancements.
That's right. So how do you think, let's talk about some of the success stories. How do you think this will impact prostate imaging?
I'm very passionate about prostate imaging, and I've been doing it a long time, and we've really tried to get the right protocols down. I think men's health is going to be a real big issue and a real big priority in the years to come, because I think there's better ways to work up prostate cancer than just the blind trust biopsies and PSAs and digital exams. And with all the interventions coming on board, I believe that those of us that are able to accommodate these patients in a way where they're going to be okay with it.
Yeah.
In other words, if we can do a diagnostic study in 20 minutes, which we can do, or we can do a screening study without contrast in 9 or 10 minutes,
Right.
all of a sudden people are going to begin to talk about it and say, hey, that's not so bad, my PSA is high, why don't I get an MRI prostate before I have that biopsy, which is really a very appropriate way to work up these patients.
Right.
And so by making it easy and pleasant for a very difficult population, I think it's going to kind of, enhance our ability to kind of create some enthusiasm on the part of the male patients, who generally are not
Never
very enthusiastic. Yeah.
Very true. Do you, maybe this is, a little longer term, but it'll be a fun perspective to be able to see, what you did maybe, a year ago, and then that patient follow-up, right? Does that change? Do you see more, right?
There's a lot of technical challenges with prostate imaging, and my technologists have become very adept at getting good images. We always compare to old studies, and it gives me, a little bit of pleasure to see that every year it is a little bit better.
Yeah.
Without a dedicated coil, using the air coil, we're getting very nice images now. I mean, what happens when we can use the air recon DL on the diffusion scans,
Right.
and all of a sudden shorten that 6 or 5.5 minute study to 3 minutes, and maybe you have a complete study in 8 minutes. I mean, that's exciting, and,
Right.
and knowing that the images are probably going to be better than what we have now. So it's just going to get better and better.
Right.
Pretty exciting.
It's really exciting, and
Yeah.
I know some of the the roadmaps on there. It's really exciting, and to me, I think it really changes how we approach MR. Right? It's real to me. It's a game changer. I think most people would agree to that. I think it really kind of shifts the paradigm of what MR can do, right, and continue to grow with that.
One of the frustrations I have as a practicing radiologist who really prides himself on having high quality images and really nice studies to make diagnoses is that there's not a lot of sophistication on the part of patients. They really don't know the difference between a 3T Pioneer with air recon DL versus a 0.3 Tesla open field magnet. They're going to look at price, they're going to look at the lobby, they're going to look at the website,
Right.
and they're going to see if their referring doctor is willing to send them there. The image quality on the new technology is so high, and I really try to put images in my reports so that the doctors can see them, so that the patients are seeing them. Eventually, I hope that there's a little bit more sophistication on the consumer side, whether it's an MD consumer side or a patient consumer side, because really we should be imaging all of our patients on the highest quality scanner.
Right.
And I hope that we can kind of begin to educate and continue to educate these people who really, at this point, don't know the difference between excellent quality and mediocre quality.
So what are your impressions of, deep learning and, AI infused into medical imaging? Is it something that's making you more intelligently efficient? Is it something that, definitely has a place and a long lifeline, making things?
Just a little background, and we were talking about not going to RSNA this year, which is such a disappointment.
This is sad.
But every year we go, and I talk to a lot of people, and there's been a lot of very interesting artificial intelligent products coming out. And I was talking to a friend of mine who works for Philips, he's a lead team guy, and we talked philosophically, but how is artificial intelligence really going to help us? And I have to say that up to now, these artificial intelligence applications are pretty clunky. I mean, most of them that I really think are valuable, we have to send images away, they process them, they come back, we have to send them a check
Right.
for which we don't get paid.
Right.
And so the business model's not there, and the workflow's not there. It's really a problem. And so for deep learning and artificial intelligence to function, it has to be part of the workflow.
Right.
These types of artificial intelligence, deep learning, Air Recon DL is embedded,
Yep.
okay? It's part of our workflow. We don't have to push a button, send it somewhere else. This is the way it's going to need to work in the future. And those of us who are clever enough, GE in this case, who are clever enough to figure out how to do that, they're going to have increased market share because people are going to recognize the value of it.
So you have Air Coils and Air Recon DL, One Sigma Pioneer. So the question would be, are you going to add this on to additional Pioneers or additional scanners that you purchased from GE?
You know, let's just say I think you've got a very good opportunity to sell additional equipment to Houston Medical Imaging.
Excellent.
Obviously, when you've got a bunch of capital, you know, placed into these large magnets and large installations, you don't deinstall. But I think it gives us the opportunity to look at new opportunities and new sites. And I'm pretty confident I'll be spending a little time with Nicole and Mina in the near future.
Awesome. I like that.
Yeah.
And then maybe I can spend a little more time down here again, and
Absolutely.
we can look and see what else we can do.
It definitely gives me an edge over the competition.
I love it. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate taking the time and sharing your experience about the whole Air families of products that we have.
It's been my greatest pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you all for joining us today when we talk about our firsthand experience about Air Recon DL.